Okay, let me try. Okay, try that. How's that?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, Lee's traveling today, and so you have me.
Okay, perfect.
So
Awesome, Rich. Welcome. Thank you for
nice,
joining.
nice to hear you. Where are you, Paco, these days?
I am in El Sonte.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
When you coming to see us?
Yes, that's a great question. Let's do it soon.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I
Okay.
was bummed to miss the conference and having to bail on you guys. I was having some health issues around that time,
Okay.
but I heard you guys
Yeah.
had a great conference.
Yeah. I think we aim to fuse lifestyle and Bitcoin together, and I think we achieved that. And we're currently in the planning for one in 2025, so that should be fun.
Okay. Around the
So
same time, or what? When are you guys planning?
we're not decided on a date right now. It'll be early 2025. Yeah, because that's our dry season. So
Yeah.
that's the best time to have these kind of things. We don't want people to get rained off.
No, I think it's similar weather patterns to El Salvador.
Yeah.
Um,
So
well,
so carry on.
yeah. So I think we can get going. Paco, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Okay, everyone, good night. Thank you for joining to this Bitcoin Circular Economies series. Tonight we are joined by Rich from Bitcoin Jungle, and I see also Francis now joining. Francis, do you want to come up stage? The idea is that we have been having these Twitter Spaces for almost a month now, with a different Bitcoin circular economy around the world, to showcase what they have been doing, their success story, the challenges that they have faced. So yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you, Rich, for joining. Francis, welcome.
No problem.
So just to give a little perspective, I remember when I first started seeing Bitcoin Jungle pop up. Actually, the guys from Galloway said, "Hey, there's somebody who's forked the wallet in Costa Rica and is building this project, Bitcoin Jungle." So we were super intrigued to see somebody, obviously in the same Central American neighborhood doing that, and started hearing reports back about your guys' focus and really, I believe, and I'll let you guys tell the fuller story, but it did more out of a focus on the expat community and some challenges with people being able to handle their financial life in Costa Rica as expats. And so I've had the privilege of sitting down with Francis a couple times and doing a podcast with him, and so have heard his perspective, but would love for both Rich and Francis to maybe kind of trade back and forth and tell us the story of how Bitcoin Jungle was born, and give everybody a little perspective, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the technical details from there. I know you guys have some unique things with pretty much anybody being able to interface using Bitcoin with the local kind of text currency system that you guys have there. I'm not sure what it's called, but anyways, if you could start us off, Rich.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So how to start? So back in 2020 and 2021, so I was living in Costa Rica, and I was about to open up a school, and I wanted to accept Bitcoin, and I already held Bitcoin, but I wanted to accept it as payments, and so I just reached out to the Twitter space and said, "Hey, can anyone help me accept Bitcoin for my school?" And a lot of people, well, a few people responded, but one of the person that responded was Nicholas, who created the Bitcoin Beach wallet, and he literally said, "You should open a wallet." And at that point, it wasn't really on my radar as such, but I was able to connect with Lee, and then it became like a reality. And I remember going to the first adopting Bitcoin conference. I didn't know anybody, and I was just walking around saying, "Hey, I'm from Costa Rica, and we're going to start a project, and we're going to make a wallet." And everyone looked at me like crazy, and like, "Who are you? We don't know anything about what you're going to do. Have you got any money?" And then yeah, and by the time I got back from adopting Bitcoin, that first conference, Lee had already hard forked the wallet. Yeah, so I remember in the conference, I remember going up to Nicholas and telling him, and he just looking at me like I was completely crazy. But by the time I got back from that conference, the wallet had been created, and and it was just this really small little project. As soon as I got back, Lee was trying to transfer me, a couple of, $50 or something, onto the wallet, and because we had no Lightning connections, it wouldn't really go through. But now we're like, two and a bit years later, we're like ranked in the top 50 of all the nodes in the world. So it kind of just then like just started to snowball. And then so once we had the wallet, our plan was to just go to small vendors. And the reason why we chose small vendors is because they're the bosses. They're the bosses of their. So trying to go to shops or trying to go to like a bar or a restaurant, there's too many barriers, too much friction to start. So we started in the Eco Feria in Dominical, and we were lucky that we knew the creator of that feria, and both Lee and we knew the woman independently. I used to teach her children. Lee had met her, so she automatically had trust in us. So having that gatekeeper to open the market to us and say, hey, trust these guys, they're cool. They're going to explain to you about Bitcoin, and it's going to help you. And so we started that market. I think that was like, well, when was it? Probably, I forget my dates now. Probably December 21, I think. Would that be correct? Yeah, December 21. And then they just started to accept it, and they started to see how easy it was, and we would guarantee them the money if they didn't want to hold Bitcoin. So when we first started, the vendors would take Bitcoin, but by the end of the market, we would cash them. We'd say, hey, you've just taken, $50 in Bitcoin, we'll give you the cash. And then slowly they begin to learn about it, and less people start to want to cash out, and then they want to hold, and it just becomes that like slow process. So as well as signing up the vendors, I would be outside the market signing up the just people coming in, and I would give them like $3-4 worth of Bitcoin and say, hey, you can spend this and go ahead. So we download the wallet. I'd give them a few bucks in Bitcoin. And at first, I would just be giving them the Bitcoin. What I didn't realize is that I needed to take them through the steps of like how to spend the Bitcoin. So after maybe the first, second or third week, I became much more selective about who I'd choose. And then I would basically, give them $3, take them into the market, make them buy an empanada. And then you'd see that the full connection of like, oh, wow, this really is money. This really is something that I can use in a really constructive way. And and so then it just began to snowball from there. And
just a quick question for details. Was that primarily expats that you're talking about, or
yeah.
Costa Ricans, or
yes. So
expats? Okay.
one of the we did a lot of study on what we wanted to do, and we were clear we wanted to copy the model of like Bitcoin Beach and use the Galloy wallet and hard fork that. We were clear that that's what we wanted to do. But having been to El Zonte and having been to El Salvador and having listened to the podcasts and stuff about El Salvador, we were clear that we were a different project, right? We're much more of like reducing friction for foreigners to come and holiday and live in Costa Rica. So that was our target market. Yeah.
Which I love, because that's what's so great about the decentralization of all these circular Bitcoin economies. They all are, meeting different needs and communities in different ways. And so I think that's one thing I always stress to people, because sometimes people will criticize like, oh, well, they're not doing it like this, or they're not meeting this need. It's like, no, that's what's so great about having it in this model, is everybody can meet the need that they have and see.
Yeah. I think my biggest advice. Can you tell Maggie to turn that down? My biggest advice to anybody. My daughter's playing Queen really loud. Sorry. So my biggest advice would be like to, if you were thinking about setting up a project, just be limited in what you want to achieve to start, because what that means is you have control over your space. So if you understand your community and you understand the parameters of like what you want to achieve on a small scale, and then it can expand much easier. Whereas if you just have a very vague idea, hey, I just want to have Bitcoin adoption anywhere where I come from or anywhere I go, it's too hard. So we in the start of it, we were really focused on just the three towns where we live. Yeah. So what we did was
And can you give people a little reference point for people who don't know
okay,
of
sure,
where
So
that location is and how
so
close
we're
together
based
they
in
are?
the southern where were we? We're on the southwest of Costa Rica, and it's lots of tourists and lots of people who want to set up either their primary homes or secondary homes. So it's quite an affluent area of Costa Rica, um, and so and then we call it the Golden Triangle, but there's an area that from goes from Dominical, and then 20 kilometers down the coast road is Uvita, and then another 20 kilometers or so south is Oachal, and then to complete the triangle, there's a place called Tinamastades. And so this area is very like lifestyle centric. Lots of masseuses and life coaches, and it's got a whole energy and vibe to it. And a lot of people coming into Costa Rica and going, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here to do something. So it's just got a real positive energy to the area. Lots of development now, but it's not that bad. Mostly people building nice big villas, and so it was really clear to us that lots of these people already had some understanding of Bitcoin. All we needed to do was give them opportunities to use it. Yeah, and so the adoption, I wouldn't say it was easy, but we were people already had an understanding of what we were trying to say, and also a lot of people here were maybe they've had negative experiences with their governments, through COVID and things like this, and so they're already in that space where they're looking for alternatives. They're already looking for different solutions. So there we are to present. We can facilitate your life here in Costa Rica. We can reduce the friction of money, and so it's a very receptive audience here. Yeah. So
And
to answer your
how did the original onboarding of businesses and the Costa Rican
okay.
vendors
Okay.
go? I know you guys do a lot of
Yeah.
stuff with farmers markets and then
Yeah.
expanded
So,
to
so,
overall businesses.
so we started the farmers markets, and obviously that was easier for us because you literally talk to the person over the table and say, "Hey, we'll show you how to accept Bitcoin. If you can either keep it, or at the end of the market, we'll give you money." That's like the simplest transaction we do, just dealing with like small business owners. And then, but we were obviously always wanting to expand. And actually, the first like bricks and mortar place that we got, other than my school, was, but that didn't really count because that was like the starting point. Was the I was in Dominical. I was working at the market to sign people up, and I was wearing a Bitcoin shirt. And a guy just grabbed me and he said, "Hey, what's this shirt?" And I said, "It's Bitcoin." He's like, "And what are you doing?" I'm saying, "We're signing up people at the markets." And he happened to be the owner of one of the most popular restaurants in that area called Mono Congo. And he was like, "I want to accept Bitcoin. I want to accept Bitcoin in my restaurant." Right. And so, yeah, so then, once we'd got, one of the most well-known restaurants in the area, right? Um, it's easy then to turn around to other people and say, "Hey, well, Mono Congo already does it." So they're thinking, "Oh, well, maybe we should do it." And he also owns a chain of restaurants as well. So we're able to, get all of his restaurants. So it was just a chance meeting. And like I said, during COVID, he'd been prepped to, to, to think outside the box. He'd watched the Bitcoin price go up, and he'd spent lots of money keeping his restaurants open. And he literally said to me, I would have been better off just putting all my money in Bitcoin. and closing the restaurants for the amount of money that he had to spend to keep his restaurants open. And so, yeah, it just began to snowball from there. And then, Lee was able to really produce some, easy solutions for the restaurants. So we would give them points of sale. If they didn't have a point of sale, we would give them points of sale. We would buy them and give them to them. Like I said, we're a much more affluent project, I guess. So it's not that we're all affluent, but we're all just willing to, to put a little bit of investment into the project of our own money, our own Bitcoin. And so,
Lee's a pretty talented developer too. So
yeah, the thing about Lee is obviously he's a great coder, but he's absolutely solution orientated. When you sometimes, especially in business, you deal with tech guys and they always create problems. Hey, I want to do this, and they're like, oh, these are all the reasons why you can't do it. Yeah. Whereas Lee is just solution driven, right? You give Lee a problem, he wants to solve that problem. And so that's what, for me, of course, he's a great coder. And, but what for me is like, once you present the problem to him, he wants to make it, the best solution for that. Whether it's a small restaurant, whether it's a huge restaurant, whether it's just that, someone trying to, work, selling empanadas. So that was a big plus for us, having like a real can-do attitude. So we were all being really can-do in a way. We're all getting out there. I like to say that we just reduce friction. That's our job. Our job is to reduce friction. And then Francis came along, and then we reduce the friction again. We kind of almost come to our natural. By the time we'd signed up lots of restaurants, all the best restaurants in the area were taking Bitcoin. All the vendors, we had hundreds of vendors in all the markets. And at that point, we'd kind of come to a bit of a glass ceiling in the project. And Francis comes along, and he can talk about this. And then we were able to start offering SimPay, and that just opened it up again. And now the stuff that we're working on, we shall open it up again. So we kind of reach these glass ceilings and then break through them, and then reach another glass ceiling and break through that. And every time we do that, the project, even though we concentrate on just our small area, the project just spreads around Costa Rica. And now it's all over Costa Rica.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Bitcoin jungle map right now, and there's literally hundreds of businesses all over Costa Rica. So, it used to just be in your region, you'd see them. Now
well, right now, like Uvita is the most highly concentrated group of vendors in the world. That's what I'm reliably told. There's not a concentration of single vendors greater than in Uvita. And that expands. And all those, the majority of the little orange blips you see on the map, the majority of those people signed up themselves. We didn't go to them and work. Sometimes they need to be like handheld, but the majority of them are just signing up themselves and saying we again, we made it very easy for you to use the wallet because it's in colones as well. And colones is our local currency, and the Costa Ricans are quite attached to their local currency, and it's a very beautiful currency. The notes are really beautiful, and so I think that helps. That the Costa Rica, we're not rejecting their currency and doing it in US dollars. So there's this kind of alien thing being imposed on them, like Bitcoin and dollars, and so that really helped people. And then we also made it very easy to put your flag on the map. And so, people, when people ask us, how do we sign up? We were like, well, just download the wallet, put a Bitcoin sign in the window, and you're accepting Bitcoin. Obviously, that gets more detailed if they have staff, and then they probably have a Bitcoin Pay server account. But, at its fundamental parts, it's just literally downloading the wallet, accepting Bitcoin, putting up a sign, and putting your marker on the website, and by making it easy.
Yeah, no, definitely the user experience is just crucial to getting people to actually use Bitcoin. I'm curious for the people that are spending Bitcoin, primarily the expat community. Did they come to it as Bitcoiners, or are there a lot of them that have just weren't really interested in Bitcoin before, but now it just makes it so much easier to live their life that now they're kind of moving to a Bitcoin standard.
Yeah. The majority of them, just like most people on this journey, they start off with shitcoining, and then you learn about Bitcoin. So, when I used to hand out Bitcoin at the markets, my biggest dread was bumping into a shitcoiner who'd then want to talk to me for 25 minutes about some random coin. Right? that would be, because that would just like waste my time. What I wanted to do was like get people download the wallet, get them to use it. You'd always bump into people who've got the latest coin, which is they want to explain to you is better than Bitcoin. So yeah, definitely we have that community here of people who come to it as a money go up thing, and most of us do come to Bitcoin through that. But we're able to basically, if I'm talking to someone from Ripple, I'm like, well, you can't spend Ripple here. You can't spend it here. So I don't care how much you're going to tell me how great it is, right? Because you can't buy anything here with Ripple, really. But you can go anywhere now in Costa Rica and use your Bitcoin as a payment rail to pay for anything, right?
But I guess that's what my question was: is there a lot of the expats that have come to it for that reason? Like, it wasn't because they're specifically interested in Bitcoin. They just realized, wow, this is much easier and works better than
Yes.
the current system.
Yes, definitely. That's definitely something that happens, for sure.
I'm curious too to hear about Simpe, because the first time that I hear, I was like impressed, and
Mhm.
I like Mike mentioned it. I think what you guys did there, it will be a need even here. That we're in Bitcoin country, so
Yeah. Well, I'll just tee up, and then Francis can talk about that. Francis, you here? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I'm here.
so the thing you have to understand about Costa Rica is the majority of Costa Ricans, it's an affluent country. There's still poverty, but it's a fairly affluent country. It's a fairly stable country. A large proportion of Costa Ricans, they do have credit cards. They do have bank accounts. They have this thing called SimPay where they can pay through their phone using telephone numbers. So, uh, and dollars are accepted in every store, but dollars aren't the currency. They're very attached to their currency. And so the majority of Costa Ricans aren't really looking and thinking, we need to, our currency doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us. They're not thinking like that. Yeah. So for us to be able to then access the SimPay system, yeah, really helps to kind of onboard local Costa Ricans. Yeah. That really helps. Of course, it helps to do expatriates as well. But basically, you know, we're basically showing them there's something better than SimPay, because right now the majority of Costa Ricans think SimPay is brilliant. They love it. They think it's fantastic. Yeah, they're not questioning it. But what we're able to do, we're kind of like almost coming in the back door there and going, hey, look, we can help you use SimPay, but also use this other payment rail where you can move money around and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So, yeah, it works on it works for both for the expatriates, because the SimPay system isn't open to me because I'm not a local, and then it works on the locals. It gets them to start questioning their financial mechanisms. So I think Francis should explain how he did this, because I remember talking to Lee, and Lee was like, "Oh, this is the best bit of code I've ever written." And I did the Homer Simpson. I'm like, best bit of code yet. So I feel like there's so much more in the pipelines, to be able to solve people's problems. So I think Francis should explain how the whole SimPay thing came about and just how revolutionary that is.
Well,
Yeah,
Francis, can you give people a little bit about your background? I know a lot of people in here already know you, but for those who don't, just a little bit about the experience that you brought with you to Costa Rica. I know originally you weren't thinking to do something like this in Costa Rica, but I love the way it's all come together. So give people a little background.
yeah, sure. Well, in Canada, I've been in the off ramp, on ramp business to Bitcoin for as long as my whole adult life. Like, I started on ramping and off ramping businesses in 2014, and I moved to Costa Rica like a lot of the expats in our area, because of the COVID lockdowns was the kind of like straw that broke the camel's back. But as a general desire to reconnect with nature, live off the grid, live in a tight rural community where everyone knows each other, like just like escaping the city kind of. And that's I would say generally the one thread that everybody has in common in Uvita. Even in Uvita, there's a lot of locals, that come from San Jose, that come from the main city, that it's not just expats. There's a lot of Costa Ricans that leave the city and they go live in Uvita because they want to live a freer life. So that's how I first got to living in rural Costa Rica. I wasn't living in the Bitcoin jungle area at all. and then I moved to Dominical, and I went to the farmers market in Dominical, and that was like one of the most insane, amazing experiences of my life. This was in 2022. So Lee and Richard and the other guys at Bitcoin Jungle, Hans and Govinda, had already done a very good job of orange pilling the farmers market. And I show up at this farmers market, and like I had no idea that this was going on, and everybody like accepts Bitcoin. So I just show up. Imagine me like a huge Bitcoiner. I just show up there. I have no idea that there's a thing called Bitcoin Jungle. I had heard of it, but I wasn't really aware of it. And then everybody accepts Bitcoin. So I was kind of like blown away. And then I was like, oh, I gotta fucking meet these guys as soon as possible. So I met with Lee and Richard and the other guys. And I became very good friends with Lee, and he's a hardcore Bitcoin tech guy. We immediately connected on all the Bitcoin philosophies and so on and so forth. And the one thing that struck me is that, as Richard mentioned, Lee and Richard would go to all these vendors and like cash them out for fiat when they needed fiat. And that was kind of like part of the original promise of Bitcoin Jungle, which is try out Bitcoin, and if you don't want to keep Bitcoin, then it's okay. You'll be able to sell us the Bitcoin for fiat if you don't want. And even though, as Richard mentioned, like in terms of statistic now, like most vendors keep their Bitcoin. Like that's the overwhelming majority of vendors are keeping a large amount of their proceeds. But I saw Lee just like going to all these stores, delivering cash, and I just kept telling him like, man, you can't do that. Costa Rica is a kind of a safe place, but you can't like walk around with cash and be known as the guy who's delivering cash to all these businesses. It's like, first of all, it's not safe for you to be known as the guy who always has cash. And it's obviously not going to scale, and it's specifically not going to scale beyond our little area, because here, if you have to drive like 10 to 15 minutes to a vendor to like give them cash, that's fine. But as long as it's like a 30-minute radius from where you live, but otherwise it doesn't scale. So we started to develop this idea, like, okay, I know how exchanging work. I know how fiat payments work. I know regulation, dealing with banks, like all the really annoying stuff with running a Bitcoin company, which is to deal with the fiat world. Like I've kind of made that my bread and butter with Bull Bitcoin in Canada. So I know how this stuff works. So I'll figure out a way to automate this process of cashing out the vendors in a really seamless way. And that's how we came up with this integration. So we launched a Bull Bitcoin, I won't say clone, but yeah, kind of like a Bull Bitcoin clone in Costa Rica. Like it's a local company. It's not run out of Canada or anything. And we did this integration within the Bitcoin Jungle wallet, which essentially allows anyone to instantly convert a Lightning Network payment into a local fiat payment. And as Richard said, like this is one of the things about Costa Rica. Like people are really well banked. That's one of the differences with El Salvador, I think, which is that there's no difficulty for any local to have a bank account. Credit cards, it's kind of another issue, but like bank accounts are fairly common. Even like the very poor farmer on the side of the street selling, bananas that, maybe can't really read or write that well and doesn't have an education, like he's still banked, fairly decently. I wouldn't say these are great banks, but they're definitely like functional enough. So this kind of like payment network that they have in Costa Rica It's kind of like the equivalent of ACH in the States. It's actually better, honestly, than ACH. It's better than SEPA. It's better than Interac in Canada, which is, kind of surprising when you think of a quote unquote third world country having this like really awesome payment network. And then what I did was to just connect Bitcoin to this thing. And, since I joined Bitcoin Jungle, like the project has evolved a lot, So, and one of the things I want to touch on also regarding the tech stack before we move on, because Richard was talking about it, we don't just have the mobile wallet, we also have a very robust BTC Pay server network. So I would say that probably half the vendors, maybe not half, but like a third of the vendors are using BTC Pay. They're not using the Bitcoin Jungle wallet directly. And there's a very good reason for that. If you have staff and you leave like a phone with the Bitcoin Jungle wallet at the counter, then like all the staff has access to the Bitcoins, because you can use the Bitcoin Jungle wallet to send and receive payments without logging in or without KYC or anything. So we developed this like really robust BTC Pay server infrastructure so that now like all the staff has to do is basically click a link and it opens up through the Bitcoin Jungle app. So this is like one of the things that's different from Blink, for example, the former Bitcoin Beach wallet. Like within the Bitcoin Jungle app, you can spin up a remote BTC Pay server instance. And as soon as the funds are received in BTC Pay server, they're automatically pushed to the owner of the business's own wallet. So that's really cool. And we also have like, the Bitcoinize machines, the POS that we bought and that we distributed, I think like about 100 of them. So like the tech stack has been forked significantly from Galoy, even to a degree now where it's like not even compatible. We're still using the old kind of like Bitcoin Beach wallet. We haven't upgraded to the new Blink wallet because we forked it too much. Like we did too many modifications on it, so that we're like no longer compatible with the new Blink stuff. But it works really, really well. And one of the things that kind of changed, I'm not sure if it's because of the SynPay integration, because by the way, you can also buy Bitcoin with the SynPay integration, which is super dope. So one of the main problems that I fixed immediately was, okay, I need to make sure that Lee doesn't like die or like either of exhaustion or gets robbed. So we need to off ramp from Bitcoin to local currency. But at the same time, we're like, all right, as soon as I'm plugged into the local payments rails, then we can also let people buy Bitcoin. And in Costa Rica, it was really, really hard to buy Bitcoin. It was like almost impossible, to the degree where when people told us like, hey, where do I buy Bitcoin? We would tell them like, honestly, there's like no way to really buy Bitcoin in Costa Rica. There's no Bitcoin ATMs. I mean, there are some now. We've got a group of friends that are running some Bitcoin ATM machines, but there's like 4 of them in San Jose. There's no local exchange. You have to basically use Binance. That's the only way. And you have to wire money to a Binance account in, I don't know, Panama or something. And then your bank the banks in Costa Rica are pretty stiff about KYC and international transfers. So sending international transfers out of Costa Rica is really, really hard. You need to be fairly close to your bank, like, in essence, you need to be rich and well connected, like to be able to send international wires out of Costa Rica seamlessly. And everybody was like buying Bitcoin on P2P Telegram groups and that kind of stuff, which is, as people may have experience with, it's cool, peer-to-peer trading, but it's full of scams and frauds and problems. So with this integration, people were now able to download the Bitcoin Jungle wallet to buy Bitcoin. So this opened up, I don't know if this is what created this shift, but it created a shift from the demographics, which as Richard mentioned initially when we started, we were very aware, like, if you want to have Bitcoin adoption, you need to have people that are spending Bitcoin. And who is spending Bitcoin? Well, it's rich people. It's mostly expats and it's mostly people that already have Bitcoin. So that's kind of like what we focused on. But as soon as we started to allow people to buy Bitcoin within the app, then we had a massive surge of Costa Ricans that were not from Uvita, that were not from our area, that suddenly started to use the Bitcoin Jungle app in order to acquire Bitcoin. So we had this discussion recently, like the project the way that I see it, it was bootstrapped by foreigners because foreigners had the money and foreigners had the motivation to spend Bitcoin, but it became much more Costa Rican over time. Like right now, and we also, got a lot of media attention, media spotlight. So it grew out of the area really quickly when this on-ramp and off-ramp became available because, suddenly there was a lot more use cases that were available to people to just, a lot of people, they can't just accept Bitcoin. If you're running a construction company and you accept Bitcoin, then you have guys to pay. This is a fairly common flow of funds. Actually, you have an expat, which or a Tico or someone that they're building a house or they're building a business and they want to pay their contractor with Bitcoin. The contractor gets the money and then he needs to pay his staff, his workers, and for the materials. And in order for that to happen, you need to be able to convert Bitcoin to local currency really quickly. So the project started bootstrapped, facing the expats. But right now I have the customer support WhatsApp chat right in front of me, and I would say like 3/4 of the customer support requests are in Spanish. Definitely now there's more Costa Ricans using Bitcoin Jungle than there are expats. So that's like a big shift that happened. And also we hired like now we have one Costa Rican that's working full time. We have another Costa Rican that we're hiring that's working full time to do engineering and customer support and all sorts of stuff. And we're kind of like in a stage where we're professionalizing the service because now we have, I don't know how many users, but a lot. I think we process about 20,000 transactions a month are happening in the Bitcoin Jungle ecosystem.
I've got some data if you want. Can I give you some data?
Sure.
So
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
We've downloaded nearly 4,500 wallets. And in the last 30 days, 540 downloads. The number of active users in the last 30 days is 2,500. And it's just shy of 20,000 transactions in the last 30 days. We've helped shift about 5 Bitcoin into self-custody. In that, people who come onto the wallet, and they've like they're a restaurant, they're a successful restaurant, and they start to get quite a substantial amount of Bitcoin onto the wallet. So they have an alert that tells them you need to move the Bitcoin, and if they don't move it, then we make a personal visit to them and tell them to take it off, and we help them, give them cold cards. So we've moved more than 5 Bitcoin off the wallet into cold storage for people. So like I said, kind of.
No, yeah, and then obviously we don't want to be custodians. It's just because the nature of Lightning is such that it's much easier to set people up with custodial wallets than it is to set them up with a non-custodial wallet and teach them about liquidity and managing channels and doing your backups and so on and so forth. But there's definitely a path for us where we don't want people to be custodians of the Bitcoin Jungle wallet. And as soon as people start to have too much Bitcoin on there, they don't necessarily get an in-person visit, but they are strongly incentivized to move the funds out.
Often that happens though, because these are like restaurant owners, so we know them, so we tell them get rid of, you need to move that Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, because some of the restaurants, they probably the amount of sales is probably only like 10% maybe, but it still builds up over time. And some of our restaurants now have been taking Bitcoin for years, right? And they're some of the most popular restaurants in the area. So they're building up a really tidy stack of Bitcoin.
Yeah? Oh yeah. I mean, just with the Bitcoin Jungle Festival that we had last February, I think we calculated that we added 3 Bitcoins to the local I think it was like an insane amount, like maybe 2.5 Bitcoins or 3 Bitcoins that we noticed were added to our transaction volume that wasn't there before. And yeah, and as time goes by, we're becoming less and less of a local project focused on expats, and more of a national project that's gradually becoming more and more Costa Rican. So yeah, so that's been a really awesome and interesting change. For example, we're doing a lot more content in Spanish. We're doing in-person classes. We actually just opened an office in Uvita. That's a great move that we just did. We opened an office in Uvita last week in order to have a full-time Costa Rican staff there, so that we can do in-person consultation sessions for free and to help people, offload their Bitcoins from the Jungle wallet to their cold cards. We have a program to set vendors up with cold cards, and so on and so forth. So I think the future right now, like the short and medium term future, is a lot more adoption outside of our immediate network, and the project is growing nationally. So that's great. So no longer just confined really to our little area, but now scaling kind of like rapidly. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, the thing is also, we don't, like, everybody in Costa Rica that I've talked to, like, there's a real positive view of Bitcoin Jungle, and we're working really hard also to demonstrate the economic value that this brings to the country. So initially, the economic value was, hey, we are getting expat money into the country, so we're helping. And also, speaking on the topic of COVID, like, one of the reasons why the Bitcoin Jungle project was so successful, I think, is because during COVID, the farmers market got a huge hit. So not many tourists, not many investment going on, people closing their businesses. It was like that all over the world, but especially so in an area that's tourism dependent. So we kind of like stepped up and we're like, we're going to get tourists here to spend their money locally. And that's kind of like how I think we were able to convince and get so tight with the local community. We're no longer just like these weird expats that are like getting their Bitcoin stuff into the community. Like, we're a full blown integrated part of the community now, which is great. So yeah, getting a lot more traction amongst the Costa Ricans has been one of the biggest shifts. And there's just like so many expats, right? So like we've already pretty much tapped out like the expat community. Like, everybody in Costa Rica that has Bitcoin and that's an expat is already onto Bitcoin Jungle. I mean, there's a lot, but there's not that many. I mean, how many expat Bitcoiners are in Costa Rica? I don't know, probably a couple thousand. And as Richard said, we have like 5,000 users or something. So we've pretty much tapped them out. So now it's time to grow beyond that small scope of expats, Bitcoiner tourists spending their money, and becoming more and more a daily tool for Costa Ricans to do their business.
Ramon, did you have a question?
Yes. So, no, that's amazing, guys. It's really, I'm looking forward to come and visit you. And Rick, you don't know, but I was trying to convince Francie to come and live here with us before before this. We were surfing, we were doing barbecues, but it didn't work. But um, but if you guys can explain us, like, if we're a tourist, we're walking in Costa Rica, and if we want to pay with Bitcoin, and the vendors want to accept Bitcoin payments, there is not a need to use SynPay, right? But if the vendors doesn't want to accept Bitcoin payment, how's work, like, how is the process if I want to pay with Bitcoin, but he's gonna receive money in his bank account?
It's
Yeah.
really simple. Can I just answer one thing first? I just want to talk
Go
about,
ahead.
you talk about Francis going to El Salvador. The thing about the Bitcoin Jungle project is it's incredibly organic and it's open source. And so there's no one sitting down and going, oh, this is our year plan. This is what we want to achieve by this. This is what we want to achieve by this. It literally is just like an organic process where people are coming to us and we're just accepting them into the project and letting them help. And I think probably that kind of like open flow that we had, I think that was quite appealing maybe to Francis when you saw, it wasn't like, oh, this is what Bitcoin Jungle's supposed to be. It was like, Bitcoin Jungle is what you want it to be. Yeah. So immediately, Francis, with all his
totally
experience, could just be like, boom, I can connect it.
Oh no, it's totally chaotic. It's completely disorganized, and that's like super awesome about Bitcoin Jungle. It's really hard to tell like who's in charge and what's our budget. And like at this point in the process, we're definitely trying to get a little bit more of our stuff together because like we got the national spotlight on us. People are talking about us in the news, and there's people in the parliament are talking about Bitcoin Jungle. So we definitely gotta get our shit together. And I mean, one of the things that appealed to me about Bitcoin Jungle is kind of like Lee. There were some problems to solve that I knew how to solve, and that main problem is the one that Roman is talking about. It's like, how do we interface with fiat? So the ideal flow, as you said, Roman, is that there's no fiat involved. So the vendor has a Bitcoin Jungle wallet or a Phoenix wallet or a BTC Pay server. The spender has Bitcoin, no fiat involved, bing, bang, boom, it's over. But what we did with this integration is when you want to spend Bitcoin and the vendor doesn't accept Bitcoin, the vendor will usually accept SynPay. So the way that SynPay works, it's a phone number based, it's an SMS based system where you basically like show up to a vendor and they'll have like a post-it note or like a piece of paper on the cashier that says, if you want to pay me, send me money to this phone number. So you go into the Bitcoin Jungle app, you type the phone number, and then you click send, and that's it. And then the vendor gets a text message right away that says, you've just received, money, this amount of money. What happens in the background is that the Bitcoin Jungle wallet sends the Bitcoins to the Bull Bitcoin system. The Bull Bitcoin system converts it to local currency and then automatically sends a payment out to the recipient. So from the point of view of the vendor, he just got a fiat payment. From the point of view of the spender, he just sent Bitcoin. But in the background, we acted as a middleman and performed that conversion and that fiat payout. So it's like really, really seamless. And that's one thing that's really key for tourists in the region. It's that, not a lot of places accept credit cards. So Costa Rica is like fairly well banked, but it's still a cash-based economy, especially in rural areas. And it's not very easy to pay with credit cards in Costa Rica. It's becoming more and more, but it's also very expensive. Like if I'm a Canadian, for example, and I'm spending from a Canadian credit card in Costa Rica, I'm actually paying twice the foreign exchange rate because I'm switching from Canadian dollars to US dollars, and then from US dollars to Costa Rican colon. And that is like 6%. And I'm not joking. Like that's just my foreign exchange rate. And then the vendor is being charged by Visa, I don't know, like let's say 2.5%. So there's 8.5% of that transaction, which is going to the banks. Some of it is going to my bank, some of it is going to his bank, but like we're losing a lot of money there. And then what we've done is this exchange rate, and like Bull Bitcoin is not in Costa Rica to make money. Let's just make that clear. Like we're actually losing money on this. I mean, we're not going to be losing money forever. That's not sustainable, but it's definitely not the same kind of business that we have in Canada where like the Canadian exchange, we're here to make money, we're here to charge fees, and because there's a lot of competition. In Costa Rica, we have a much more, I guess, like, philanthropic attitude to it where we're not going to charge high fees. So typically the exchange from Bitcoin to Cologne, it's like I'd say it's about 0.8% or something like that, the fee that we charge. And most of that fee goes into covering our own costs. So at the end of the day, we're not making a lot of money on that. In the future, I think once it grows and it becomes pretty standard, we might start thinking about profitability on that. But for now, the idea is just to like make it very, very convenient. And then also, if people want to buy Bitcoin, effectively, they just text money and then they get money in their Bitcoin Jungle wallet. Like the experience of buying Bitcoin in Costa Rica is nuts. So you open the app and it says, hey, you want to buy some Bitcoin? Sure. Text 10,000 colones. That's like $20 to this phone number. and then they like text the money to us, and then they get a Lightning payment in their Bitcoin Jungle wallet within, I don't know, like 10 seconds or something. So it's a really, really cool and nice and seamless flow that we've built. And yeah, kudos to Lee. Lee and I kind of like worked on this as a side project for about 8 months. And then now it's just fully functional, fully streamlined. And now we have, 2 employees that are local employees that are helping us with customer support and all that. So yeah, that's how it works. So it's pretty much instant fiat to Bitcoin on ramp and off ramp with Lightning. Honestly, I don't think there's any place in the world where it's that seamless. It's pretty awesome. Like, yeah.
I'm curious, Francis, what is since you've allowed it to go both ways and people to purchase Bitcoin, what is the kind of overall flow of funds? Do you have more people going from fiat to Bitcoin, or I'm assuming for now, since it's still early stages, you have more people going from Bitcoin to fiat, but have you seen that kind of shifting at all?
Completely shifting. Yeah, it started out like 95% people selling Bitcoin for fiat. And now, honestly, I don't know. I don't have the stats in front of me. But just based on the fact that we haven't had to rebalance our liquidity that often, it's got to be getting close to 50-50. It really is. Like it's got to be close to that. There's a lot of use cases. There's a lot of like also immigrants in Costa Rica that are sending money back home. Just like a side note, there's a lot of Argentinians here, right? If you're a young Argentinian, the cool thing to do is to move to Costa Rica and work in a restaurant, like be a surf bum and work in the service industry. So we know for a fact that we do have a significant amount of people, I would say like 100 or 150 that seem to be buying Bitcoin to send it back to Argentina, which is pretty awesome. So that's one thing, and we've got just local Costa Ricans. As Richard said, like there is a definite Costa Rica middle class, right? It's not a poor country. It's a relatively wealthy country. So if you're a middle class Costa Rican, you're definitely and you're techie or you're a nerd, or there's libertarians in Costa Rica like everywhere else. So there's kind of like the Bitcoiner demographic is like pretty present. For example, the guy, one of the local Ticos that kind of like started out helping us as a volunteer, and then that we hired. His name is Eugenio. He's a perfect example. He's a young, 30-year-old in his 30s Costa Rican. He's a Bitcoiner. Like all his friends are stacking Bitcoin, and they're now using the Bitcoin Jungle wallet. And what's really cool is that the more people buy Bitcoin on the app, the cheaper it is for the vendors to convert their Bitcoin. So if we have like a 50-50 ratio of people buying and selling Bitcoin, we can actually keep our margins like fairly low, because we don't have to trade on international exchanges, for example, to convert dollars to colones. If we can keep so we're actually actively encouraging people to buy Bitcoin in the app. It makes it cheaper for everyone. If we have a 50-50 ratio, then we could massively lower our margins and still not lose that much money. So that's been really awesome. And like another thing is, we don't just want it to make it easy for expats to buy Bitcoin. We also want to give Bitcoin exposure to locals. Another weird thing about Costa Rica is that a lot of people are banked, but having like investment vehicles is not accessible. There's also kind of a rural to urban divide. There's kind of like a social clash in Costa Rica where, if you're from a poor town and, if you're, indigenous in origin, you're not necessarily getting the same, I guess, level of treatment than an affluent city Costa Rican. So for a lot of these people, Bitcoin is the most accessible savings vehicles that they have, because the only other option that they really have is, it's either cash in the mattress, cash in the bank, or Bitcoin. Like having a financial advisor to like invest in stocks is kind of out of reach for a lot of the, poor, kind of like more rural indigenous population. So that's been really cool.
Awesome. Well, we usually try to keep these to about an hour, but I think I'm gonna make a decision for us to go a little extra, as long as you guys are okay with that. We want to be able to take a few questions.
Sure, no problem.
So for folks who have questions, go ahead and request to come on up, and I'll bring you up on stage. Please make sure to make it relative to what's happening in Costa Rica or to Bitcoin circular economies. Sometimes people want to come in and talk about other projects or other things. We will have to cut you off if that's the case. So please keep it limited to what we're talking about here.
So, plebs together, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Hi. Hey, you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Francis. So we're based here in Goa, in India, and we are currently, just a month back, we started educating a lot of kids with the Mi Primer Bitcoin diploma, and we really think that, I mean, hearing your story of how you all managed to do things in Costa Rica, it's quite similar over here in Goa as well, because a lot of people use the UPI system, which is, I would say, similar to SimPay, but a lot worse in terms of surveillance by the government. And that's the major way that most people kind of pay through to buy stuff around all over India as such. So we do have a possibility here to try and reach out to I mean, use a similar strategy that you guys did. My question is like, how long did it take you all? What kind of funds did you all require at the start? What kind of a team did you all require? Because those are a bit unknown. I mean, it's harder to guess like how to get started, you know.
Yeah, that's a great question. Do you know Vishal, by the way, from Goa, Bitcoin developer?
I'm not really connected to him.
Yeah,
But, there have been a couple of people who've reached out, so I might know them by their pseudonym probably.
yeah. His name is Ishi. Actually,
Oh,
Bitcoin
Ishi,
has.
yeah. We know Ishi and Jodo as well.
Yeah,
So I
so
think
so
when
so Ishi and Jodo work for Bull Bitcoin, by the way. So that's great. And we are actually planning to do something very, very similar to what we're doing in Costa Rica with UPI in India. So definitely like reach out to Ishi, and we can definitely work together on that. And I think like Goa is very similar to Bitcoin Jungle in many respects because it has an affluent demographic of foreigners that are there for similar reasons, you know, yoga and wellness and lifestyle and you know also partying. But there's quite a bit of foreigners in Goa that are Bitcoiners. So I think that that there's a lot of similarities. The thing about like how much all of this costs, it's I mean, so we were lucky enough to have very skilled people that donated their time. So it didn't cost us that much money to bootstrap Bitcoin Jungle, but it did take a lot of our time. You know, so Lee, for example, is a high level software engineer. He's kind of a, you know, grade A developer. Like if you were to hire a guy like Lee, like, you know, if we were to have to pay someone like Lee, we could never have made this work. You know, Richard is a people's person. He's going around all the time talking. He's doing marketing. If we had to pay someone like Richard to do this, we couldn't have afforded it. Same thing with everybody else. You know, if I was to like charge money for my time to the Bitcoin Jungle project, then obviously we didn't raise any money. Like we didn't raise any funds. There was no VC investors. Kind of like all the expenses were paid out of pocket, but it was mostly having a team of dedicated people that donated their time that made it possible. If you were gonna like bootstrap this with no one, then it would probably cost you quite a bit of money to bootstrap it. And like our expenses at this point are, you know, there's not a lot of expenses to a project like this. You know, there's the servers, but you know, servers are not, you know, that expensive. You know, they're a couple of $100 a month. I think a lot of the expenses that we have are the Bitcoin like POS machines that we buy. They're like $150 each. They're great, by the way, like the Bitcoinized POS machines. I think I saw Priya Bitcoin here in the chat room earlier today. I don't see him there still, but these POS machines are like awesome. And then, you know, as time goes by, we start to hire people to help us with customer support. But again, like that was only 2 years after the Bitcoin Jungle project was launched. We hired our first employee. For the first 2 years, it was just us kind of like sweating really hard. on it. So yeah, so
Can I
not
just
sure
add
how.
something? Can I add
Yeah,
something?
sure.
So, I think, for one, I don't really want to sound like a hippie because I'm not, but in your project in Goa, you just need to reach out to the community and see what they can offer, right? Just like put calls out to the community and see who's there, and what can be achieved, will become apparent quite quickly, and then you just move from one to the other. So having like maybe this goal, we're going to do a similar thing like Simpay, yeah, that's a great goal to do. But if you just focus like, this is what we need to do. I need to raise money. I need to. You're kind of missing. You're not seeing the woods from the trees really. The idea is just reaching out to Bitcoiners, being as open as possible, being open source, having a great narrative, and then what happens is people will come along. Like the chance that me, who's not a tech guy, bumping into Lee, who's a total tech guy. What are the chances of that? Well, it just happened, right? And then Francis coming along and able to have this. So rather than having like this master plan and these goals you need to achieve, it's really just about connecting with people, being open, being true, being honest, and having like this, like serving Bitcoin, and then your project will take its own pathway. Yeah, it will
Yeah, and
take its own
it just takes
pathway.
a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time. Like for the first year, I wasn't involved in Bitcoin Jungle until about like I would say like maybe a little bit less than a year until it was formed. But
Yeah, something
I
like
know, yeah, but I know how it started, right? It's like Richard and Lee and everybody else just spent a really large amount of time going to the stores and the vendors and just going like, "Hey, do you want to accept Bitcoin?" Okay, sure, and like teaching them how to download the wallet. But definitely like plebs together strong. Like let's connect after that because I think I can probably help you guys and go to set up this thing with UPI. I've been my one of my dreams right now, like the thing I'm working on at the moment, is to be able to replicate what we did in Costa Rica and India. It's much more difficult. I will say for people who don't know India, India is a pretty complicated place when it comes to payments, and the government and the banks are maybe not as open in India as the rest of the world, but I think it's definitely possible to do that.
Awesome. Well, looks like we have Adam and then Albert. So Adam.
Hey guys, how's it going? Love what you're doing. I'm Adam from Bitcoin Victoria Falls. I've got a question for you guys about two different things related to merchant adoption because we similarly went through the Me Premier Bitcoin cohort recently, and our next step is merchant adoption. We're thinking about bringing on 2 business adoption managers to help support the project. It sounds like you guys did this pretty organically, but do you think that's a good idea as far as moving towards having people to help these businesses with onboarding? And then have you studied the African mobile money as it relates to your Bull Bitcoin technical background at all, and whether Bull Bitcoin would be something that would work with the way that mobile money is used in Africa?
So regarding merchant adoption, it definitely requires a lot of time, a lot of finesse, a lot of follow up, especially if you want it to work correctly. You need to set people up with a BTC Pay server instance. I mean, I think that out of all the options out there, like what you do is you have like a centralized BTC Pay server and you create these stores which people have access to. And then, there is a little bit of training involved. I would say the time it takes to set someone up with a BTC Pay server instance and do it properly is definitely like a couple hours, right? It's not like setting up someone with a wallet takes like 5 minutes, but setting a merchant with a merchant POS system, it's more like a 2-hour kind of a time investment. I would say like even if you're charging fees, it is not a profitable venture. It is not a profitable venture at all to be signing up merchants. I gotta say, even if you charge them 2%, it's really hard to see that becoming a profitable thing. So I would say definitely before hiring someone, like consider the ROI is going to be quite minimal. And even in like the most successful of cases, we have like one merchant that say we've got, let's say like maybe 4 or 5 really big merchants. One of them is a butcher. I don't know. I don't want to dox him, but he's done a lot of sales. And even if we were to have charged him like 1%, for example, I don't think we would have made more than like $500 or something off of that. So, and that's like our most popular merchant, you know, and so it's definitely not like profitable. I'll say that it needs to come from the heart for sure.
Can I
Yeah,
can I just
we're
add? Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Okay,
I was just
I'll
gonna say
just
we're a non-profit, so we're not worried
yeah.
about that part.
Oh,
My
well, that's great. Well, if you're
my
nonprofit, definitely having someone to do that is a huge plus. Like we just hired someone to do that because it became really, really heavy in terms of time. You have to, WhatsApp, you have to show up to the meetings, and then, they have a problem with the with a payment, and then you have to investigate what's going on. Is it an on-chain? Is it a lightning? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough, and hiring someone to do that for us, Eugenio, I don't know if he's in the room right now, but it's the best decision we've ever done, is to hire someone to help us do that.
I just want to add about if you're talking about hiring someone to go and sign up merchants, is that is that what you're talking about, or plan out the business development? My concern with that would be that the most important thing they need to have is not business development skills, but a profound understanding of Bitcoin, because they need to be able to explain it, right? Then not from a business point of view, but from a Bitcoin point of view. And if they have a profound understanding of Bitcoin, then they'd probably do it for free anyway, right? So
Yeah,
then why
totally.
are you employing them, right? So if you're employing a business manager who has business management skills and knows a little bit about business, I'm not sure that would be the best investment. You just need to find the people who, like the evangelical Bitcoiners who want to go out there and just talk about Bitcoin, and they have to have a profound understanding of Bitcoin to explain the project. They have to.
100%.
It's like it's
100%. It's
that's
so
that's
hard. Yeah, it's so hard to find the right person because, like, there's the knowledge that you need to be able to answer any question that someone may have about Bitcoin, which is what you need when you're servicing merchants. There can be problems with Lightning, with routing, with KYC. How do I do my taxes? Is it legal? How do I secure my Bitcoin? Like that
so
kind of
broad.
knowledge. Yeah, it's so broad, and that's one of the difficulties that we've had. Is like when we were trying to hire someone, we're like, man, we need to hire someone that has been in Bitcoin for like at least 5 years. You know what I mean? Someone that's just new to Bitcoin, like even though they're super friendly and detail oriented and everything else that we need, it's just you need to have been in Bitcoin for a long time, and especially not only that, but you need to be aware of all the scams that are possible with Bitcoin. You need to be able to explain shit coins and why you shouldn't accept shit coins. So it's really tough to find the right person. That finding the right person to do that is absolutely critical.
So I hope we don't put you off, but maybe it's more like when the right people come, they'll present themselves, and that doorway will open up. And it's not about throwing funds at the problem. Let's say you've got like a war chest of like so much Bitcoin, it's not that's not going to solve the problems. The way to solve the problems that you need to do to expand a community is to know your community and be able to find the gatekeepers of the community. So, for example, for us, it was knowing the market organizers. That was the gate. So, and then we also had Hans. So Hans comes on board with Bitcoin Jungle, and he knows everyone. So he was able to open so many doors for us, right? And he also really profoundly understands Bitcoin, and so that's what greases the wheels. It's not having a huge war chest. It's not having an amazing business plan. It's about having passionate people and having people who can open doors and finding the gatekeepers. Yeah. So and that's why when I first started, where you start small, you start on a market, start on a street, start in a certain type of business, and then building up, rather than having a big master plan of like, hey, we're going to, when we first started, we got involved with somebody, and they came up with this plan to have every market in Costa Rica covered by Bitcoin in a year. And we just rejected that outright. That's not practical. That's not going to happen. We don't want to be servicing markets that are 100 kilometers away because we're walking around with like $5,000 in cash. So it's just not practical. So like keeping it small, keeping it connected, and then having really passionate people, because mostly it's just narrative building. It's building trust and building narrative. That's what we do. Yeah. So
And another really key point to orange pilling that is like we focus our efforts in a very small geographic area, like a specific street. Actually, there's if you've been to Costa Rica or even like El Salvador, like the villages are like spread out. Sometimes you have to your neighbor lives like 30 minutes away, so we kind of like orange pilled a specific street where every single vendor on that street accepts Bitcoin now, and you create almost an expectation amongst the vendors, like, well, if you open a store here, then you just gotta accept Bitcoin, because literally every single store around you. So we actually recently started to orange pill another town in Costa Rica, a town called Santa Teresa. And Santa Teresa is very similar to Uvita. It's like affluent surfers and yogis and digital nomads and expats and all that. And then when we were going there, starting a request to orange pill this town, we're like, okay, we got to start within 100-meter radius, and we need to get 5 businesses out of like the 15 businesses in that 100-meter radius to accept Bitcoin. It's a town of like 10-kilometer radius, but we just need to have one corner of the town where 5 stores in a row accept Bitcoin. So you kind of create this expectation that if you go to this part of the town, you can spend Bitcoin, and then it kind of like spreads out from there. So yeah, Richard nailed it. It's like you got to be super targeted, super narrow in your focus, and also, by the way, a lot of people ask me this question, so I'm just gonna answer it outright. How do I convince someone to accept Bitcoin? And the way that I do it is I go to someone and I ask them, "Do you accept Bitcoin?" And if they say no, I say, "Why not? Everyone else accepts Bitcoin around here." And then the number one answer that people give me, it's, well, I don't have the app. I don't have the app. So then I say, well, just give me your phone. I'll download the app and I'll show you how it works. So, I kind of like insist. I'm just like, give me your phone. I'll do it right now. Let's just do it right now. Like, okay, cool. So I download the app on their phone and I'm like, okay, you see, this is the receive button. This is the send button. This is this is that. And it's like, okay, like, can I pay you with Bitcoin right now? And I almost never get a no. Like this strategy, like I almost never get a no. And then you send that first Bitcoin payment to their wallet and they see the little animation and the green check mark. And then, some wallets have a little sound, and then they're on the hook, they love it. It's almost as if people want to accept Bitcoin, but they feel like they need permission, or they feel like it's not for me, or they're just like, I don't know, I guess they're shy to accept Bitcoin. So I'm just like, I overwhelm them. I'm like, we'll do it right now. Like, give me your phone. Like, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, give me your phone. I'll do it right now. I'll show you. And I just grab the phone and then I do it, and then it's done. And then, people don't uninstall the wallet once it's installed on their phone. Once you've got a Bitcoin payment and it worked, like the likelihood that you're just going to forget about Bitcoin and never use it is like really low.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
that's the passionate people that Rick was talking about and that you need to find.
yeah. So Francis, I definitely want to just affirm you saying go deep in a small nucleus, because that is so important. It can't be the shotgun approach if people have to travel 20 miles to spend Bitcoin in another place. So we always tell people start small, start
And that's what you guys did, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what you guys did in El Zante. I don't know about the other circular economies, but I'm almost certain that every successful circular economy just gradually, organically came up to the same conclusion, which is we need to get 5, 6 stores right one next to each other, create an expectation that this is a Bitcoin place. Oh, and yeah, and it's just honestly, it's stuff that's as dumb as just like bring Bitcoin stickers and like stick it on their door, like, hey, see, can I put the sticker there, and like, and like give them merch, give them hats and T-shirts and stuff like that, like get them feeling like they're involved in something, and yeah, it's and as Roman said, it's like you just gotta be very enthusiastic about it. And that's also why, going back to that topic of hiring someone to do that, it's like people can kind of like smell a bullshitter. So a lot of people will just smell that you're being like sincere versus you're trying to sell them something. And that's also another thing that's interesting. It's tough to sell something that's free to someone without them thinking that's a catch. So that's also like a funny challenge. Like we've had this person at Bitcoin Jungle actually that was very skeptical of us, and we had a meeting with them because he's like an influential guy in the area, and he was like he wanted to meet us because he was kind of sketched out about what we were doing, and he just could not understand why we were doing this for free, and we're like. We really had to like explain to him like, no, dude, like we don't need the money from this. Like we have other jobs. Like this is a hobby. And I know it sounds sketchy because why would we do it? There must be a catch if it's free, right? We're planning to rug pull them, or we're planning to charge fees for them to withdraw or something. So that's been, interestingly enough, one of the challenges is like explaining to people why we do this for free in a way that doesn't make us seem like scammers. That's hard, and that requires a lot of passion and knowledge for them to feel like it's genuine.
Awesome.
Can I?
Well, I
Can I
want
just?
to get the.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, I just ripped out my earphones. I want to talk about like going back to like being laser focused, and when we started, that's why we really looked at El Zonte, and if you've been to El Zonte, it's so small and tiny, but that project, was able to change El Salvador, was able to change the world. And when you started, I'm sure you weren't thinking this is what it's going to be huge and large and massive. It was just like, how do I change the people around me? And so, it's that kind of like domino effect. So, and the El Zonte story is like the kind of the blueprint. So you might have different conditions, and you might have different ideas, and you might have different people, but that blueprint of like starting small, keep your focus, and the influence you'll get can be nationwide or global. All right, and so you don't have to worry about the big picture. Just focus on the small pieces. Getting this vendor, getting that vendor, getting this vendor, and before you know it, you look up and you think, wow. It's like we look now, and you look at the map, you're thinking, wow, how are we all over Costa Rica? We never made that plan. We just kept our focus, kept it local, kept it connected, and building trust with the people that know, and then that trust just spreads like a virus almost. So, definitely, if you're wanting to start a project, you have to study the the Bitcoin Beach project first and see how that worked, and then you can look at something like us, and then you can see, okay, and they're doing it slightly different, but it's still the same. It's still the same nuts and bolts. It's still the same. We're still doing the same, sticking to the same fundamentals, basically. Hope.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to get to Albert's question, and then we're gonna cut off. We've gone way over, but this has been such a great. I think this has been our best one yet. So, Adam, maybe you and Francis can touch base offline for the second part of your question. I know you were asking him about his experience or knowledge of mobile money in Africa and how that could be a similar system could be put together. So maybe you guys can connect offline, unless Francis wants to say something real quick about that.
Well, I don't know how mobile money works in Africa, but I suspect that it's probably fairly similar to what we have in Costa Rica. I'm not sure. Actually, in Costa Rica, the system that we use is managed by the central bank, so it's definitely not like it's like we're connected straight to the central bank payment network. So it's not like an organic mobile money system that was, that's privately made. So that's probably a little difference. I can't speak to Africa, sorry, but I suspect that it's probably doable in a very similar way.
But maybe that's something that Adam can gather some more information. You guys can touch base, and because I can see this being something that's very pertinent in a lot of other places. So to finish this off, Albert, did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. It has been very interesting to get to hear what's happening also in Costa Rica. I'm connecting from Boston, and pretty much it has been very interesting to see the evolution as well, and from El Salvador, from Bitcoin Beach, and the impact that it has had in the country. So we have been reading about it in the case here at Harvard University. That we're studying about this whole financial inclusion. And one of my questions is in regarding to Costa Rica. Do you have a specific champion like it was in El Salvador, that when it became a little bit when it became
Are we
to the
still on?
topic? Hello?
Everyone's gone quiet.
No, yeah, I can hear. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, Albert.
When it became to
No,
the
this is Richard talking.
to the level political, I was just asking, like, for example, if you have a certain, like, either like a political party or a political character that is supporting this type of financial inclusion, like it was in El Salvador with Nayib Bukele, within the party, that was something that exploded, for the whole country. So I'm just wondering if there is such an influence in Costa Rica that can expand this knowledge to other sectors.
Francis, do you want to answer that? Because I'm thinking maybe Rich wasn't able to hear him. He's asking if there's been any kind of political champions of this.
Okay. I heard half of it. Do you mean here in Costa Rica? Have we had any touch base with the government or political people? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I believe that's what his question was.
Not really, no. They were just debating trying to ban Bitcoin payments in the parliament. So there's like a to and fro of like people who are pro Bitcoin and people who are anti Bitcoin. But we really are a grassroots project. We don't have any official support, any like connections or anything like that. We're open to talk to people, but we've talked to a few politicians, but in generally, we're grassroots, under the radar. There's no official Bitcoin jungle entity or business or anything like that. It's just we're like we don't we're everywhere, but we're nowhere. So we don't have any official support. Yeah.
Albert, I'd be curious to see what you guys are working on there and your case study. If you wouldn't mind DMing me, I think that'd be interesting to see what you guys are working on there.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, there is an actual case that is being studied here at Harvard. I'm actually finalizing my master's here, and it has been very interesting to see, how it has been collected all the information and gathering the research and pretty much keeping updated to what's happening in El Salvador. So, and I know this is something that is becoming kind of like a blueprint for other countries too.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. Seriously, this was, I think, the best spaces we've done. Really, really appreciate Francis and Rich for kind of filling us in on all the exciting things happening there in Bitcoin Jungle. And yeah, make sure you get down there to see the project. Make sure that you're following them on Twitter, and make sure that you share. Should be available in a day or two on the podcast or the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. We're going to try to come, Rick.
Yes,
Really
Rich.
soon.
Excellent. Good to talk. Yeah, I've just decided I'm going to come to El Salvador and adopting Bitcoin. I just contacted Nicholas, so hopefully I can do a talk about the project in November.
Perfect. And there is going to be also a Spanish only conference as a side event. So if you have someone local from Costa Rica, it will be nice to have it as a speaker too in November.
Yeah, maybe we can find someone.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
guys. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.